June 30th, 1941. Lviv, Western Ukraine. The city was in chaos. Just days before, Soviet soldiers had fled in panic. German tanks rolled through the streets. The smell of gunpowder and burning wood filled the air. Bodies still lay in the streets, victims of last-minute Soviet executions. In a building in the city center, a crowd gathered. Hundreds of people, some angry, some hopeful. All desperate. At the front of the room stood a man in his early 30s. Stepan Bandera. Dark hair, intense gaze, hands gripping the edges of a wooden podium. Behind him, his closest allies exchanged nervous glances. They knew what he was about to do. This wasn't just dangerous. This was suicide. But Bandera leaned into the microphone anyway. "We declare the renewal of Ukrainian statehood." The room erupted. Cheers. Tears. Strangers embraced. For one shining moment, Ukraine was free. But hundreds of miles away in Berlin, Adolf Hitler heard those words. And he was furious. Who does he think he is? Within days, the Gestapo came for Bandera. But to understand why one man's declaration could enrage the most powerful dictator in Europe, we need to go back even further. Back to the beginning, 1909. A small village in western Ukraine called Stary Uhrinev. Stepan Bandera was born into a world that didn't want him to exist. His father was a Greek Catholic priest, a quiet man who spoke softly about faith and louder about freedom. In their home, Ukrainian was the language, Ukrainian songs, Ukrainian prayers. But outside, Ukraine was being erased. The western part was controlled by Poland. The eastern part had been swallowed by the new Soviet Union, and both empires had the same policy: assimilation. Speak Ukrainian? Punished. Own Ukrainian books? Arrested. Talk about independence? Disappeared. Young Stepan watched neighbors vanish in the night. He saw his language mocked in the streets, his church defaced, his people treated like second-class citizens in their own land. As a teenager, something hardened inside him. This isn't life. This is slow death. In university, he found others who felt the same fire. They met in secret, passed forbidden newspapers, whispered about revolution. One group stood out. The OUN, the Organization of Ukrainian Nationalists. They weren't diplomats. They weren't politicians. They were radicals. They believed independence wouldn't come from negotiations. It would come from action, from resistance, from sacrifice if necessary. Bandera joined, and quickly rose through the ranks. The early 1930s, Soviet Ukraine. While Bandera organized in the West, something unspeakable was happening in the East. Famine, but not a natural famine. A man-made one. Stalin's forced collectivization policies stripped farmers of their land and grain. Entire villages were left to starve. Mothers watched their children waste away. People ate anything they could find just to survive one more day. It was called Holodomor. The Terror-Famine. Between 3 and 5 million Ukrainians died. News of the horror reached western Ukraine. Refugees brought stories, haunted eyes, skeletal frames. Bandera listened, and it changed him. If we do nothing, we are complicit in our own destruction. The OUN escalated. Sabotage, targeted attacks against those they saw as occupiers, Polish officials, Soviet collaborators. Bandera didn't hide from the violence. He saw it as a necessary tool in an impossible fight. In 1934, Polish authorities arrested him. The charge, conspiracy in political violence, sentenced to life in prison. But prison didn't break Stepan Bandera. It forged him. September 1st, 1939. Everything changed. Hitler invaded Poland from the west. Stalin invaded from the east. Within weeks, Poland ceased to exist on the map. And Ukraine? Divided. Again. But in the chaos, opportunity emerged. The Germans released Bandera and other Ukrainian nationalists from Polish prisons, not out of kindness, out of strategy. They saw the OUN as a potential asset against the Soviets. Bandera saw the situation differently. Let the empires destroy each other, and in the ruins, we build Ukraine. So when Germany launched Operation Barbarossa on June 22, 1941, a massive invasion of the Soviet Union, Bandera and his men were ready. They followed the Wehrmacht into Lviv. And on June 30, 1941, Stepan Bandera did the unthinkable. He declared Ukraine independent, not requesting permission, not negotiating terms, declaring. The crowd roared. Blue and yellow flags appeared in windows. For a brief, beautiful moment, a dream became real. But dreams shatter quickly in wartime. Hitler had no intention of freeing Ukraine. He intended to conquer it, enslave it, exploit it. Within a week, the Gestapo arrested Bandera. "Rescind the declaration," they demanded. "No," Bandera said. They threw him into Sachsenhausen concentration camp. For the next 3 years, he sat in a cell, imprisoned by the very regime some would later accuse him of serving. Irony is a bitter companion in captivity. Outside, the war consumed everything. His followers formed the UPA, Ukrainian Insurgent Army, and fought a brutal guerrilla war. But here's the tragic reality. They fought everyone. Against the Nazis, against the Soviets, caught between two totalitarian machines. The forests of western Ukraine became a nightmare. Partisan warfare knows no rules, no clear lines, no mercy. The UPA launched operations. The Soviets retaliated with brutal force. Villages burned, families torn apart. And in the fog of war, terrible things happened. Things that still haunt the region today. Violence spiraled. Civilians suffered on all sides. Ukrainian, Polish, Jewish communities caught in the crossfire. Cycles of revenge. Reprisals. Tragedy compounding tragedy. Bandera, still imprisoned, became a symbol, but an increasingly complicated one. To some, a freedom fighter. To others, a dangerous extremist. To others still, a martyr for a lost cause. Which was true? Perhaps all of them. Perhaps the truth is simply too complex for simple labels. May 1945. The war ended. Germany collapsed. The Soviets occupied Eastern Europe. And the dream of Ukrainian independence was crushed under Soviet boots. The NKVD hunted down UPA fighters, executed them, sent survivors to Siberian labor camps. Bandera, released by the desperate Nazis in 1944, fled west. He ended up in Munich, a man without a country, a leader in exile. But the Soviets didn't forget. Stalin remembered. Khrushchev remembered. And in the shadows, the KGB planned. They tracked Bandera's movements, studied his routines, selected their weapon. Bohdan Stashinsky, Ukrainian, young, expendable, trained in Moscow, given a mission. Find Bandera, eliminate him. October 15, 1959. We return to that cold morning in Munich. The stairwell, the two men, the spray of poison. Stepan Bandera collapsed. The man who defied Hitler, the man who fought Stalin. Silenced. 2 years later, Stashinsky defected to the West. He confessed everything. The KGB operation, the poison, the orders from Moscow. The truth came out. But Bandera was already gone. So what is his legacy today? Walk through Lviv and you'll see streets named after him. Monuments. Murals. To many Ukrainians, especially in the West, he represents resistance, the refusal to bow to empires. But travel to Poland, to Russia, to communities scarred by the war, and you'll hear different stories. Stories of pain, of violence, of a nationalism that went too far. Both perspectives are real. Both deserve to be heard. Stepan Bandera was not a saint, but neither was he a simple monster. He was a man shaped by impossible choices in the bloodiest century in human history. He believed freedom was worth any sacrifice. He fought two empires and lost to both. Today, as Ukraine fights once more for its sovereignty, Bandera's ghost walks again. Some embrace his memory, others reject it. But everyone must ask, what does it mean to fight for freedom? And where are the lines that should never be crossed, even in the name of independence? Bandera never answered that question. Maybe we're still trying to answer it ourselves.